Hello everyone, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I have, if you look into playlists, or if you'll search it, quite a comprehensive set of videos about the 3,000 realms, the origins of life. And I think a lot of folks, including a lot of people in our Sangha, don't understand, they hear 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, and it's too complicated. But you talk about afterlife, future lives, previous lives, life after death, all of that magical rhetoric, and suddenly there's an obsession with, yeah, what is that? Okay. Now, I don't want to repeat all of the minutia that I went into in that set of videos on 3,000 Realms, Origins of Life. Please go watch those videos if you want to take this down to the nitty-gritty. But that's what this is about. Where does life come from, and where does life go? Is death the opposite of life, or is it just the opposite of birth? And birth and death are just conditions of life. This is what you need to wrap your head around. This is what's critical to understand all of those questions and get rid of, please get rid of the mysticism and the magical thinking. And I'm not accusing anyone here, but I'm saying as human animals growing up over the centuries, there are thousands of charlatans out there, religions and gurus and Western, Eastern, just you name it, that will love to entice you into their profit-making schemes using the very romantic idea that somehow we never go away. You have to stop thinking this way. But I can see where in Buddhism, even as adamant as I am about clearing this up, there's still some confusion. So I'm going to try, in as short a time as I can, to just encapsulate these ideas that will help you understand what the situation is. And I'm going to start with very easy societal references. Most of you will recall a song that actually sounded very jazzy when she wrote it, by Joni Mitchell, on Woodstock. But then Crosby, Stills and Nash got a hold of it and made it more pop, rock and roll sounding and so forth. I like both versions, but I like the jazzy version. Anyway, Joni makes quite a statement about you and I and everything being made of stardust. And for some reason, we don't have any problem abstracting that out, right? Most of us get that. We're just stardust. So please hang on to that thought for a moment, because what I'm about to explain is very much like that analogy. I don't know about you, but a lot of us, when we first heard about the Big Bang of the universe, the creation of the universe, these words are buzzwords. A lot of us asked, well, what was before the universe? I mean, it didn't just appear out of nothing and nowhere, right? There had to be something. Here's that fascination. So let me address that very quickly, and if you want more minutia about it, please go look at the playlist. I'll put links up to it in this video. In line with this, if you're into sciencey stuff at all, Roger Penrose has a theory of the cyclical universe that is very, very appealing to me, for one, from a standpoint of Buddhist cosmology, how the universe works. I've often said that the universe that we live in, isn't something like a bubble. Like when I was a kid, it seemed like everything was created from this minute point that wasn't really anything, and then expanded and continues to expand. What's missing from that statement as a Buddhist is that it is expanding into something, which is why a Buddhist would say that it continues to expand even faster, because it's running in and through something. That something is energy, very simply. And science is starting to grapple with that, with terms like dark energy and dark matter being, more than 75% of what they calculate should be in the universe. Well, duh. Buddhists have known this for thousands of years. Okay? It's like my analogy, if you'll recall, is a drop of food coloring. One drop dropped into a vast container of water. What's that drop do? The minute it hits the water, it disperses at an incredible rate until you can't even see it anymore. It's part and parcel of the whole. So I want you to think of life this way. That the energy that everything is constituent of, that everything is made of, right? E equals mc squared. This isn't bogus science. This is very basic understanding. Energy is related to mass. When there is no mass, there is energy. When there is mass, there's always energy. Mass is just a form, a temporary form of energy. Now, if you study, and this is early Hinayana Buddhism, and you study the 12-link causal chain, right, the Nidana, Shakyamuni breaks this process down with words, but nonetheless, he talks about these amalgams of energy that can form and unform. This quiescent energy isn't dead. It's in a state of mild flux. And there are points at which this flux creates little peaks of energy and then falls away. And if those peaks continue to gather, they attract other peaks and they amalgamate into more and more and more. They begin to form. And when formation takes place, that is when we have distinction. Right? This is not that. That is not this. Before that happens, everything is same. Quietude, quiescence. But when there's amalgams of energy, there is the potential for, name it, anything. So, depending on how these energies form, they can make atoms, particles, molecules. They can start to build on one another. And if this amalgam happens to combine with certain other amalgams, certain things can begin to exist. Gases, right? Material, matter, right? Particles, photons, energies dispersed. Now take that all the way to DNA. Rocks, asteroids, suns, solar systems, galaxies. Right? Anytime you look at a map of the Big Bang, if you just take away the Big Bang aspect of it and look at it as this amazing formations of attractions of things, you can see, you can look at a map, a visual map of a timeline of the universe expanding super quickly, right? And then cooling to the point where that energy, that heat energy, starts to precipitate gases, and then gases roiling into, like Jupiter, like gas giants, formations of gases into harder, and as the universe cools, so do things coalesce, and you start to get things like asteroids, suns, planets, so on and so forth, galaxies, right? It's really not mystical at all. It's a process. And we are an instantiation in this moment of part of that process. Now, none of that, and I want this to be absolutely clear, none of that process is conscious. This is the thing you need to wrap your head around as a Buddhist. There's a lot of Hindus and Eastern, blah, 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 people calling themselves Buddhists, all of these, that want you to believe in this, the universe is consciousness. The consciousness is everywhere. Ekankar and their astral planes. And, oh my God, please put that away. Consciousness is far more special than that. Far more incredible than that. Far more precious than that. In the Nidana, Buddha never talked about consciousness. He talked about the conditions that lead to consciousnesses, the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, the touch feel consciousness, the smell consciousness. But can any of those consciousness exist without a freaking human? No. What is sight consciousness without eyes? What are eyes without a brain to interpret the signal? It's very, very plain as day, folks. This is why our lives are so important, so precious in Buddhism, because Shakyamuni recognized that we could only awaken our Buddha mind, our Buddha intellect, our Buddha perception from this humble human instantiation. Nowhere else. There's no Buddha of the universe. There's no consciousness of Buddha throughout the universe and outside the universe. No. Buddha-ness is a life condition that we humans can instantiate in order to appreciate and observe this grand, amazing process that is the energy that precipitates the potentials for life. And when we die, when this body is no longer functioning, the brain dies, the body dies, there is no consciousness. It doesn't grow wings and fly away from us and join the great consciousness in the sky. It's hard for me to even hear myself say that. And believe me, I'm not trying to hammer on those of you who might have some version of that rolling around in your heads. I'm trying to get you to understand that it is the actions you take now, in this moment, Namum Myoho Renge Kyo, that are everything. That Buddhism and Buddhahood exist here, now, in this moment. That is the entire teachings of Shakyamuni. The Pure Land is a land of purity in our minds as we experience it here in this life. It doesn't come after. It's not like we're paying penance so that we can get there. It's right here and now. The only penance you pay is your inability to understand that you're missing it right now. You're causing your suffering, right? I mean, you have to get that if you study Buddhism. Your suffering is of your own making. We create our suffering. We don't have to suffer. Our suffering is based on this attachment. And if you think that this idea of you is going to predate you or afterdate you, guess what? That's a deep attachment. You're trying to make this life, this idea of your human life, permanent. It's not from the very get-go. Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. Because life is where the attachment is, samsara. When you leave this life, no more suffering. Why? Because there's no attachment. Why? Because there's no life. The process doesn't include you and me. The process is just energy. Energy that isn't doing anything. So, if you're not there, then there's nothing for you to see. There is no thing. Nothing, no thing. Right? That's called noumena. There's phenomena and noumena. But there's always energy. So we don't reduce our existence to some kind of a spiritual energy to conjoin with the infinite energy. See, those are magical terms. Energy's energy. It's a potential for work, a potential for something. E equals m mass squared, mc squared, the speed of light. But there can be no speed of light if there is no mass. And photons are massless. So it's a little bit of a conundrum going on there between mass and the speed of light. And the fact that it's squared is a conundrum. But mathematically, the equation is energy, big E, equals mass in space. And what have I said so many times? Buddha-ness is timeless. There is no time to Buddha. There's only pristine perception of thingness, without attachment, without judgment. Right? When there's no attachment or judgment, what is there to be afraid of? What is there to be suffering about? There isn't. It's just observing the beautiful babbling brook. It's a babbling brook. Do we care that it's babbling? No. Do we care that it's clear? No. Do we care that it has bubbles and it has shapes and it has all of these different features? No, because that's the thingness of it. That's our attachments. But as our Buddha mind, we're just fascinated. Wow, look at that. Isn't that pretty? I don't mean to make Buddha-ness sound stupid. But to a human, it might feel that way. It's so simple. It's clear. It's free of influence, attachment, emotions. It's just glorious. And we can only experience that while we're in this human form, because this human form, with your head and body and fingers and everything that you are, is a support system for your mind, which is where? I recently talked about the Surangama Sutra. Thanks, Jay. And there's a part of the Surangama, and also in different ways, you'll find this in Nagarjuna or Vasubandhu, and they really dig deep into this thing called the mind. But the Surangama has an interesting conversation in it between Ananda and the Buddha about where is it? Where is this mind? Is it a little chunk inside your brain? Is it beating in your heart? Do we carry it somewhere we'd rather not think? Sometimes I think people do that. No. It's a disembodied thing, a phenomena that is precipitated, that comes from, that is instantiated from all of these consciousnesses that we're processing. The mind is an evolving property. It's not a pre-existing condition. Follow? So it also follows that when all of these consciousnesses, eye, ear, touch, feel, so on and so forth, no longer function, then there's nothing for that mind to emerge from. The mind is gone. It's not there. There's no perceiver. There's no perception. It ends with death. But understand that it only came into and only emerged with birth. It's a emergent property of life, which is without time. Buddha, timeless. But you and I and our Buddhahood is an experiential, emergent property only available to us while we're human beings, while we're being time. When you're no longer being, there is no time. You are not here. There is no thought. There is no mind. It's just pure logic. And if you keep that in mind as you read Shakyamuni, it makes perfect sense. Now, I understand there's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of translations by those humans who are encumbered by their vociferous attachment to life, and the religions that support them, that have written and translated Buddhist text. So, yeah, everything they write includes in their mind, logically, this has to be a past life or a future life. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. This is just, and you hear this all the time, past, present, and future. In this life, in this very experience, your past moment and your future moment, right? Life is a series of discrete moments, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. This is the function and emergent property of life. But life is something you experience, not something you hold. When you were born, you don't create life. And when you die, you don't diminish life. You're just a process within it. And your individual bag of bob, it only exists while you're human. When we leave this body, we don't leave it. We leave this existence. We're no longer existent. There is no me that travels through time. You have to understand, if everything in the universe, including the dirt clods under your toes, are manifested of the same thing, then when they deteriorate and go away, they rejoin the same thing. It's just energy. There is no identity to it. There's no consciousness to it. Consciousness only happens here. Energy's energy. It's not thingness. It's not phenomena. It's nomuna. There's no thing. Thingness is a unique property of manifest energy in clumps, amalgamations. And it's amazing that it somehow amalgamates to the point where it can create a you and me. It's so phenomenally, preciously minute a possibility for it to happen that we want to believe that there's some kind of a predestination to it. But we're just manifest perception. And that perception is what creates our mind. And when that perception ends, there is no mind. Therefore, there is no person. There is no distinguishing characteristic. Remember, Buddha has all these 32, these marks, the 32 characteristics of a Buddha. Those can only exist in this form as a human being. Before we're born from the womb, as Buddhists, we know our birth predates us coming out of the womb. Our birth happens when the right amalgams of energy combine to put us in a growing medium, like a plant, a growing medium that's suited for us to develop a body, a human life, a samsaric condition, to manifest a mind, a consciousness. Several consciousnesses, right? We have 9, but 8 of those consciousnesses are all about negotiating this samsaric life. That 9th consciousness, that's our precious tool of perception. That Buddha perception, not lower perceptions of me, it, that, this, that, all that distinction business. That's the functions of life, making it possible to perceive the larger process of life, of which we're just minor, temporary instantiations. The more you think about this, the more precious this life is. The more every moment of this life is. So my plea to you is, don't waste that precious time fancying something that isn't possible. Focus on making possible what is in this life. Your Buddhahood is an amazing perception of how this whole drama unfolds, simply so that you can experience it. Night-night. Life dawns and dusk goes away. A lot of processes come together in order for you to instantiate as a human being. A lot. And you don't exist that long as a human being. Because in the grand scheme of things, time itself is an illusion. We give it a label as a measure of space. But now this is where you get back to Roger Penrose and his cyclical universe, is that at some point when space reaches its limit of space, there is no distance between photons anymore. It's irrelevant. There's no clock. There's no time. And so it all collapses and starts over. It's like this great cosmic heartbeat. But that's a word, heartbeat. It doesn't imply there's a life to it. Life, the force of life, the momentum of life, is an emergent property of energy and potential. We don't exist in it everywhere. Our consciousness doesn't exist in it everywhere. It only exists in this brief period that we're here. So maximize your use of this time, because this is your moment to enlighten your Buddha-ness, to perceive the amazing, immense whole. Soon enough, it'll be gone. Okay? I hope that helps. I'll say one more thing. I think that it adds maybe to the confusion. There's a discussion that comes up in certain commentaries or sutras of Buddhism that there's an eternal condition of some sort. And again, the words are very tripwiry, and they have bias from people trying to understand this and imposing their own cultural and religious backgrounds in order to explain it. But if you were paying attention to what I was explaining for the last half hour, the one constant is energy. So you could say that energy is eternal, but that's wrong. Because to say eternal is to qualify energy as having a property of time, and it simply does not. Time is an emergent property of space. And space is a momentary thing. It's a precipitous property of energy. But energy, like photons, exist without space because they have no mass and therefore no time. Perceiving that is Buddha-ness. And therefore perceiving that has no time. So you can see how a line can be drawn between the two. But if you make the romantic mistake of thinking in your mind, picturing in your mind this vast Buddha-ness, immediately correct yourself to understand that that's a mental construct, that you're seeing your perception of Buddha-ness in your life as a human being. That when you're done as a human being, that perception is no longer. The idea of time is no longer. You are massless. Your mind has no mass. There is no energy there. There is just this property of energy from which everything manifests, and your brief moment of humanity is your opportunity to awaken this huge lens of Buddha-ness. It relieves you of the stresses and sufferings of samsaric consciousnesses, attachments, emotions. But it doesn't remove you from it, not in a physical sense. The only thing that removes you from your physical sense is when your physical sense dies, in which case there is no perception. Done. Over. As Nichiren says, enjoy what there is to enjoy, suffer what there is to suffer, and chant. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. It's hard to communicate this, but maybe if this wasn't enough to spark some insights for yourself, or if this makes you concerned, I invite you to go watch that playlist. I really dig into it in many different ways, but I don't know how much more plainly I can say it. Anything you romanticize outside of your experience of this life is simply that. It's a conjecture of your mind. It's a fantasy. And it doesn't serve you. Okay. I love you guys. I hope you know that. I sure do appreciate you, and you keep me fresh. So keep asking those questions. They're wonderful. Lots of people struggle with this. And I will continue to struggle with how to explain it so it makes comfortable sense. Okay. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey, thank you for being here. Did you know there's a third way you can help support this channel? And it won't cost you a cent. Yep. If you are not able to be a patron on Patreon or use the PayPal me at .com at Sifu Sylvain because you don't have the financial fortune to help support this channel right now, you, as I say, always support this channel by watching, but you can also help us grow so that maybe one day we can get over 10,000 subscribers and YouTube will grace us with monetization. It's not a lot, but if you can make sure you're subscribed and share a video like a simple one, just go into the search criteria and type monk and you'll have a video that'll come up that's been up for years about what is a monk. You know, it's called monk, who, how, where, something like that. That might be a great introduction to somebody who doesn't understand what a monk is to begin with. It's a tool. Use this channel as a tool to help you with your bodhisattva practice, and share a video to somebody who you think, oh, I know somebody who'll benefit from watching this. And in that way, you can help us grow. And that's a really good way to help your practice along as well. So just wanted to drop that in on you in case that's something that you might find useful. Take care of yourself again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.